Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Andrew Kernahan, Head of Public Affairs at ISPA. I'm pleased to welcome you to the second in our ISP Business Model webinar series today. This series of events is part of our ongoing efforts to expand our offering for members beyond our core policy focus. Today's busy agenda focuses on networks, with 5 presentations taking in the transition to IP over voice services, maximising network performance, deploying full fibre networks, software-defined solutions, and more. We're also trying a new platform today for the first time called Hop-In. This is to make the event experience more engaging for attendees and to try and recreate some of the experiences from a physical event. I'll quickly run through how to engage with the platform. You've already done this through the reception area, where you can find the event agenda and the speaker list. There's the stage, which is where we're talking to you from now. Please keep this tab open, and if you want to check other areas, please open new tabs to do so. We also have the Expo, which is where our partners' booths are displayed. So please take a look and engage with those later on. You can click to register interest via a button, speak with our partners live, or use the chat to ask questions. Finally, there's networking. And when you enter the networking area, click the Ready button. You'll be matched with a random attendee and get to meet them for 3 minutes. You can also click the Connect button during a call to exchange contact information. And after the event, newly made contacts will appear at the connections page of your individual profile. You can also directly message someone in the People tab to request a video call as well. There's quite a lot of information there, so that's not completely clear. Do ask us via the chat. And also importantly for today, for any questions of our speakers through their presentations, we're going to take questions at the end of each presentation. If we could ask you to use the stage chat on the right-hand side of your screen to pose questions, we'll collate and fire those over to the speakers at the end of their presentations. So without any further ado, I would like to welcome our first speaker to the stage. That's Phil Laws from Openreach, talking about PSTN switch off and WLR withdrawal. Phil, you spoke last year at a similar event, and I remember there were lots of questions and lots of interest from members. So I assume there's going to be similar today. So over to you, Phil.
Yes. Thank you, Andrew. I hope everyone could hear me okay. I'm just about to share my screen. Thank you for the nod. Just bear with me. Okay, hopefully folks can see that. So as I say, I'm Phil Laws. I'm from Openreach. I'm part of the All IP team within Openreach, and I'm responsible for what we call industry engagement. And I also run the trials as well. We're talking about trials in a short while. So my responsibility is talking, as well as with our traditional customers, to the other customers out there, the industry associations and the end customer associations, to make sure they're aware of what's happening with this important program. Just a quick review of the agenda. So I'll do a quick summary in terms of what we're doing, where we're at. I'll talk a little bit about a new sort of program that's been initiated in terms of our wider FTTP rollout. A bit of an update in terms of the trials, and a bit more about industry engagement. A little on comms in terms of things we're trying out, as well as what should customers do. So just as a summary, hopefully folks are aware of this. The PSTN is closing. It's reached end of life. And BT Group are closing that platform down at the end of 2025. So Openreach are reacting by the withdrawal of our WLR or wholesale line rental products in the same time frame. And we've introduced what's called a stop sell, which means legacy products can't be withdrawn or modified, updated, changed. Essentially, where premises are unable for a strategic product, they need to sort of order those new products rather than the legacy. Important point is that Openreach will not be providing a voice product beyond withdrawal. This will be the responsibility of communication providers, and essentially all customers need to be moved from the old platform by the end of 2025 at the latest. There's around about 15 million lines and channels left to do, so there's an awful lot, and that's a rate of about 60,000 per week every week at the end of the programme, which is not really happening at scale yet, so we need to make sure we get motoring. On the left-hand side, I refer to the products that are going. The right-hand side is the destination products. I do apologise, an awful lot of acronyms. On the left-hand side, the key points are everything from a standard sort of PSTN line or telephone line, direct exchange line, right up to ISDN2 and ISDN30. They're all going, as well as any product that might run over the top of said sort of transport platforms. The destination products are based upon fibre. So right at the top there, we have fibre to the premises. The next two are fibre to the cabinet based solutions, as well as a tactical product, SOTAP, which is a copper-based product, and an MPF in terms of the local loop and bundle portfolio, but we don't yet have fibre available. We have been talking on a regular basis with industry. We meet every couple of months, less so face-to-face now for obvious reasons, more via audio, and we're getting sort of the order of 150 to 200 people attending those sessions. So we talk about where the programme's at, what we're doing, and that's kindly supported by the OTA, who sort of co-chair that forum with us. The thing that I wouldn't have mentioned last time round, other than our ambition to roll out FTTP, is an enhancement and a follow-on from what we're doing in Salisbury, which is we've announced where exchanges, in exchange areas where we have 75% coverage of fibre to the premises, or 300 megabits downstream from our GFast platform, we are going to introduce a stop sell. So it's an advance notice of where we intend to hit 75%. And at that point, when it does hit 75%, the stop sell will then apply to the copper-based products, as I mentioned before. There's no formal date for withdrawal associated with those exchange areas. That will then fall under the national programme, the dates I mentioned earlier on. And we announced 117 new exchanges. It says 118 on the slide, but that's because one of them was Salisbury, which has been announced already. So 117 exchanges will hit 75% by June next year, so that's June 2021, and the stop sell will take effect from that point, meaning that all new activity will need to be on the FTTP product, and that is for any premise that is enabled for FTTP. In terms of the general piece and the wider piece, so we've announced an FTTP build aspiration of 20 million premises passed by the late 2020s. On the left-hand side there, we see some key dates in terms of the trials programme. So I've mentioned September 2023 already. That's a national stop sell. The Salisbury stop sell, which is a movement to FTTP, that kicks in fact in 60 days time. So the 1st of December, for premises that are enabled for FTTP, there's no more activity allowed in terms of changes to the product, upgrading, changing of communication provider. Everything needs to be done on FTTP moving forward. Mildenhall in Suffolk, that's a little later, that's targeted for May. Mildenhall's about the move to Sagia, the single order generic Ethernet access product. One thing I didn't mention on the previous slide, so those 117 plus one exchanges, that's around 1.2 million premises actually. So it's a significant proportion of the UK. And this is part of what is now going to be a quarterly rolling programme. So we're due to announce another tranche of exchanges that will be subject to the same sort of stop sell arrangement with FTTP. And that announcement, I believe, is going to go out next week. So it's imminent. On the right-hand side, so one of the things that we knew had to be done as an enabler is there are certain customers out there who only want a voice service. Typically the older or the vulnerable maybe, but the voice-only service is something that's important to them. And we have now delivered our Sagia and FTTP low bandwidth product that's primarily intended to meet the needs of that market. It could also be used for things like remote monitoring in some industry sectors, but the primary objective there was around voice-only customers. And there's a few other things on there that we can talk about as and when. Just in terms of the trials, so the trials are now live. They went live in January. So Salisbury is essentially finished in terms of the build. I think with sort of 93, 94%. There's a few things to sort out there in terms of things like way leaves. Always a bit of a trip for us there. So we're still working through with those. We will seek to get to 100%. That will take some time, a little longer. Mildenhall, as I mentioned, excuse me. So that is also live. The dates for closure on those is a 3-year pull forward from the national programme. That's the end of 2022. So like the national programme, we have stop sells introduced and we have a withdrawal of the products in those areas. And the objective here is to get as much learning as we possibly can. And these locations weren't picked because they're easy to do. And for those that know the areas might know some of the things I'm talking about there, they are quite challenging. And that's the objective, to get that learning. We do have a commercial offer in place that was announced again in January this year. That's available until next May, and that's a free connection onto the new product with no rental increase for a period of 12 months thereafter. So that's available until May next year. If it's activated on that day, so it's free connection and then no rental increase for a further 12 months. Things to point out in terms of the trial, actually migration is very slow, and so one of the observations is people don't tend to do anything unless they have to. Stop sell kicks in 2 months' time. That will drive a lot more activity around this activity. We are talking to the wider industry sectors, so some good work going on with the gas sector. We've got one of their sites up and running for FTTP, so waiting on them now to place an order and do some testing to understand how that facility can be utilised with FTTP for monitoring purposes. And similarly in Mildenhall, doing some work with UK Power Networks to understand how they can do their testing, what benefits they can get from Sogea moving from their standard WLR product. Interestingly, some of the communication providers aren't aware of the full scope of the programme. We still find CPs, some of the smaller ones, admittedly, who think they know that ISDN's been turned off but don't know about WLR analog, and some the reverse. So it is quite challenging for us, and we're doing our best to make sure that through the normal communication routes, through specific contacts with them, we're trying to make sure they are aware and do take action. We've mentioned the Openreach Test Lab before, so that's due to be built in our head office in London, but obviously because of the COVID restrictions, we had some building work to do. That all had to be put on hold. So given the restrictions there are now lifting, that will hopefully be up and running in the new year, and that's where people can come and do some testing on any CP's equipment in one location, rather than sort of travelling around the UK to CP's various test labs. Further work we're doing, so an awful lot of work with some of the larger sectors, C&I sectors particularly. So the local resilience forums, there's broadly one of these for every police force around the UK. This is where the blue light services get together and talk about what's going on, how they're working. I'm working with them to make sure they're aware of what's happening with the programme. Also have sessions with the telehealth associations. In fact, I had one this morning, and also working with the broadband stakeholder group, will be very helpful along with Tech UK to help with the sort of awareness. And also some consultancies now wanting to talk to us about how they can help engage with some of the sectors. The government sector is clearly one of the important areas to focus upon. So working with DCMS at their various cross Whitehall sessions, also with the Crown Commercial Service, who in effect their procurement arm for the products that they buy. Last point there, I actually did a podcast, so those that are familiar with BAPCO, ever come across them, this is the Blue Light Communications sort of association, and they released a podcast on just last week, I think it was, no, 2 weeks ago, and that is all about PSTN shutdown. So if you're interested and want to give a listen, there's about half an hour of chatter in relation to that particular programme. The last slide, excuse me, the last slide is some work that Openreach have been doing in Salisbury, looking at the best ways to communicate about what's going on with FTTP. Been quite a bit of activity looking at the benefits of FTTP, what it can bring, but there's also some other different channels that have been thought about. So done some work on Facebook, for example, and TV, the more traditional sort of places. I'm trying to figure out, what sort of marketing would be appropriate, and what through what channel. So a lot of activity going on there, and the learning for that should be out later this month. The last thing on the right hand side is we do have quarterly newsletters that we produce in Openreach about the programme. The last one came out said the 9th of September, and that will give people an update. So if people do want to find out what's going on, please do come back to me. I'll happily put you in touch with those. And if you do register for those newsletters, then you will get the formal invites for our industry sessions. And the next one of those is due on the 20th of October. Clearly, it's going to be an audio, as I mentioned earlier on. Key things I talk to everyone about is to make sure, this is often a message for the end customer, to talk to your CPs. Clearly yourselves, being CPs yourselves, I would suggest you think about how your business is supported with the various products today. I would imagine that the majority of people on this call use Openreach products some way, shape or form, either at home or in their business lives. So think about what you've got, develop the lines inventory. What lines do you have? What are they used for? think about migration plans, what the appropriate timing is, with your CPs, of course, and also understand for migrations, are there any specific requirements that may be required? Good examples of that are out-of-hours migrations and parallel running. We think they are some of the key requirements of businesses, for examples. I'm not sure it's appropriate or applicable, but where there are new installations, it'd be appropriate to ask your service providers as well to make sure they provide the more strategic products rather than the legacy products. But the key point is, as ever, bang on there, please talk to your communication providers. And that is me.
Cool, thank you, Phil. That's really interesting as usual. Just checking for questions. I mean, I have one just to kick off. Clearly, there's lots of discussion within industry forums. You mentioned quite a few there. Some of the deadlines are starting to approach, although the big ones are still several years off. Is there a plan to do more of a sort of a business awareness campaign in due course to make some of the end customers more aware, so they're talking to their CPs and ISPs about it as much as coming from industry?
Yes, and a lot of thought is going into what that program might look like and who should run it. We are talking to the likes of government through DCMS and with Ofcom and with BT Group. And what I would say is that at the moment, I think people recognise that something needs to be done, but broadly, people don't know who should lead on that and what the messaging might be. It's quite a complex messaging. Mm-hmm. The broadband stakeholder group have been helpful. They've got their Future of Voice website up and running, and that's more for consumers and SMEs. But we do recognise that some of the business sectors aren't really covered at the moment, so a lot more work to do, and I don't know the answer as yet, I'm afraid.
Just another one for me. So a year on from when you spoke to us last year on this, how would you say the industry engagement and take up and awareness has been in those 12 months? Is it a pretty positive picture, or is there a lot more to do?
My take is that the larger CPs have really got it, and they've grasped it and are working through it. There's an awful lot to do. They have to develop new products, think about the propositions, the timing for discussions with customers. So pretty positive there. What I would say is that the further you go down the size of the organisation, the less and less they are engaged. They're trying to work out today's problem as opposed to thinking about something that is downline. The key message for us is to make sure that they are clear. Whilst you might not need to take action now, please do make a note. You have to do something, and if we can help you, then please do let us know.
Yeah, thank you. Had a couple of small questions in the chat, which are probably more appropriate to follow up via email about some links and so forth. So we'll talk to you about that and get it sent out as part of our follow-up.
Okay.
So thanks very much, Phil, for talking to us again. I'm sure we'll be talking again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Next up, we have Barry McGinley from EPS Global. Hi, Barry.
Hey, how's it going, Andrew?
On the benefits of network disaggregation. So over to you.
Okay, cheers for that, Andrew. And good afternoon, everyone. So we're going to have a look at tier 2 and 3 ISPs and service providers kind of reaping the same benefits from open networking and network disaggregation as tier 1s and kind of hyperscale data centers have before them. So we're going to have a look a little about EPS. We'll have a look at market trends and the general open networking ecosystem. 3 use cases: disaggregated cell-site gateway, Cassini transponder, bare metal switches and aggregation routers, and then a few questions at the end if we have time. So EPS are 21 years old. We're an Irish company. And I suppose we got involved in open networking around 2013 when we became distributors for edge core networks. And from that, we got relationships with all the NOS vendors. And what we like to do, I suppose, is take some of the hassle out of open networking. So it can be a bit daunting. Say a company will say, right, I want a bit of software. So we'll say Pluribus. Now, what hardware does that work on? Now, what transceivers work with the hardware? So it can get a bit complicated. So we take that complication away for our customers and basically have switches with the NOS installed, the licensing, transceivers bundled in, ready to slide into racks. And we do that for our software vendor partners as well, actually, branding and so on and so forth. So we're 21 years old. We've 28 global locations, and we have 3 disti hubs, one in Dublin for EMEA, one in Shenzhen in China for Asia, and one in Indianapolis for the Americas. So we have the globe fairly well covered. Okay, so the open networking ecosystem. So I suppose you can look at it from three kind of organizations. So we have the ONF, the Open Networking Foundation, the OCP, which is the Open Compute Project, which looks after hardware and some software bits as well. And then we have the Telecom Infra Project. I'm going to speak about the ONF and TIP. So I'm not going to go into the history of open networking because we'll be here all day. So we started in 2016 and they started work on their platform called Cord. So Cord's a platform and then projects run inside it. So it's central office re-architected as a data center. And the idea was for telcos and carriers to kind of reap the same benefits that hyperscale data center guys did through using bare metal and open source software. So 2019, we had reference designs for some of the projects within the platform. And then late 2019 and 2020, we had production rollouts for some of the projects. So SIBA, AT&T, Deutsche Telekom, Turk Telecom, Trellis, which I'm going to mention in a little while, and a lot more. So it's been a success to this point. So just looking at a report from 650 Group on, I suppose, the addressable market for the next 5 years. And for these areas, they reckon it's 490 billion. So RAN, Evolved Packet Core, optical transport, service provider, router, and broadband access. I know the ONF particularly are looking to take a big chunk out of broadband access using their SIBA pods, maybe a bit out of optical transport with their ODTN project, and again, OMAC as well in their Evolved Packet Core project. And a little bit in Open RAN, but we'll see now when we look at TIP. TIP are going to take a good chunk out of Open RAN and the optical transport part. Okay, so the Telecom Infra project. So this started around the same time as the Cord project started in the ONF. And obviously they work closely with the ONF, so as not to overlap, I suppose, on projects. There is some overlap, but not too much. And they work with the OCP, so a lot of the hardware they use comes directly from, or was born in the OCP, as we like to say. They have 500 members, we're members ourselves. They've got a marketplace where you can look at the end-to-end solutions and the projects within those end-to-end solutions. And they've split their projects into three distinct categories. So we've access, so that's just basically the RAN access. So Open RAN, I'm sure everyone's hearing about this over the last couple of months. And we've transport, which is backhaul from the RAN back to the core. And then we've core and services. There's a few projects there on segmentation and slicing. And projects we're involved in between the three organizations. So we're heavily involved in a backhaul project called the Open Optical and Packet Transport. That's with TIP. We're working with TDF in France on ONF SIBA pod, working with Mundo Pacifico in Chile on a Cassini transponder installation. We're going to be looking at the Cassini now in a minute. And we've installed open networking testing labs in the UK. And we're also working on OCP server labs for network function virtualization infrastructure. We've been putting OCP hardware in data centers in the UK now for 6 or 7 years, but now we're starting to put the same hardware into tier 2 and 3 service providers. And we have a particular focus on bringing OCP hardware to Africa now as well. So we've just started to add partners, but that's going to be a more 2 to 3 year project. Okay, so Southside Gateway. There's a video going to run on the bottom left here, which is kind of explaining the Open Optical and Packet Transport project, but I'll batter on and talk away while you watch that. So, what is it? Well, first created by Vodafone, Telefonica, TIM, Brazil, basically created the design specification. And then in the who there, you'll see Edge Core, UFI Space and Delta. They went off and they built the actual hardware based on those specifications. And what we ended up with was a 1RU cell site router, supports with MPLS, with time sync, and it's built for the existing 2, 3, 4G networks and new 5G mobile infrastructures. I'll play that video again, actually, in case you didn't see it. And so why was it required? Well, mobile-based stations connect to cell site gateways using SFP or RJ45, but now with the 4 and 5G network and GS interfaces. So basically, their cells not fit for purpose. Who's involved? So in the hardware, we've got from UFI Space and from Delta, and on the software side, we've ADVA, IP Infusions, Alknos, AT&T, Exynos from Exaware, and Verve from Volta, and offering some Infinera and Altron as well. So how can you get your hands on it? Contact us. We can get you testing units as well and trial licenses and all that kind of stuff, or go to the exchange at tip. I think it comes back to us anyway. So, and impact wise, it's had a huge impact actually. So obviously you're going to get CapEx savings when you use bare metal or white box, but I think AT&T are in the process of deploying 60,000 of these boxes, which has really helped them reach that 75% virtualization goal. And there's big deployments going on globally. Telefonica, Telia in the US, Germany, South Africa, Taiwan, lots more. This particular project, the OOPT, has been a massive success, and this particular product has been a huge success as well, as you can see by those numbers. So use cases. So there's two main use cases. So we've got Greenfield 4 and 5G, and we've got 5G site upgrades. And if we look at on the left, at the bottom, so our kind of classical or traditional RAN, a radio unit, distributed unit, and centralized unit, and the cell site after it. But we can do it multiple different ways. The placement can be different depending on mid-haul, front-haul, and backhaul. We've got some other use cases: customer edge router in dual home IP MPLS ring, and then a provider edge router in backhaul networks as well. If you need to talk about any of these, please go to the booth after. Actually, you don't want to listen to me twice. I'll just mute that. So it's a video of me installing a DCO line card into a Cassini transponder. So you can watch that while I talk about it. So what is it? It's an open packet transponder. It's the first of its kind, and very importantly, it's modular. So it integrates 100 gig layer 2 and layer 3 with layer 1 optical transport. And that's implemented by the line cards you see there. So there's we've eight line cards, and we've got 16 QSFP ports as well. Why? So I suppose when EdgeCore were building this, they did it in conjunction with the tier ones, and modularity was one of the big focuses. So they don't want to be going out replacing a box every 2 or 3 years when they move. So basically, once you move from 100 to 200 to 400, and this box is 400 gig ready, you're just going out and you're sliding a line card in. And as well, the modularity side of it helps for smaller guys as well. So you only have to fill one line card on one side and one on the other to get you going. And as the business takes off, you can populate the device. So we've obviously 100 or 200 gig, we've ACO or DCO, and we've got 100 gig QSFP as well. So who was involved? So EdgeCore Networks, Lumentum on the optics side, Fujitsu, NTT, and then IP Infusion's Oknos on the software side. There is open source options, Sonic and Goldstone, but actually I don't think they're production ready at present. Excuse me. So if you want to get your hands on one, speak to ourselves at EPS, or again, go through the telecom infra projects, either marketplace or onto the project itself, the OOPT. So some use cases. There, DCI, data center interconnect. So obviously over 100 kilometers, under 100K, we have some nice solutions from Smart Optics, but over 100 kilometers. The second one on top, service provider backhaul. So this again is our OOPT project. So we have our cell site gateway into our aggregation routers, then into Cassini, then amplified depending on distance back to your core. We've Metro, and we've backbone transport use cases as well. Again, come to the booth and have a chat with me if you want to know more about the use cases. Okay, finally to finish up, switches and aggregation routers. So if you see on the right hand side there, the image is spine and leaf, which is traditional now in data centers, but there's a project within Cord called Trellis, which isn't an acronym for a nice change. I think it probably describes the kind of fabric, but basically it's spine and leaf within the central office. So we have a wide range of bare metal switches for that, 1 to 400 gig. We have 10 and 100 gig edge routers using the Broadcom Strata DNX chipset, so the Qumran AX, MX, the Jericho 2, and those routers support TimeSync, have big buffers, 8 gig buffers, and external TCAM for quick lookups. Again, we have relationships with all the software vendors in this area, and that's one of the things that we pride ourselves on. Bare metal servers, so LANer and Super Micro, I should say, for the bare metal servers, and then OCP servers from Quanta, which we're seeing a huge uptake on recently. Then traditional layer 2 plus managed switches. We've got open line systems from Smart Optics, industrial PoE switches. We're global disties for Finisar optics, Amphenol cables, and CTC Union. So all the accessories that you might need for your network. And very quickly, we have a dedicated service provider solutions page. So we'll have all the hardware, all our software partners, traditional hardware and accessories, and then links to webinars we've conducted with our software vendor partners on specific topics for service providers in open networking. And I've written a heap of blogs there on end-to-end solutions and individual products. So thanks for listening, guys. That's me.
Cool, thanks, Barry. And as you can be in the booth later to chat through in more detail. You mentioned about, well, you mentioned software vendors within that. Can you explain a bit more about some of those particular vendors?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I suppose the software is going the same way the open networking data center software went. So when that started, you kind of had the big hyperscalers building their own software. So FBOSS from Facebook, Sonic from Microsoft, but then all these other guys started appearing. So you had Pika 8, Cumulus, Pluribus, so on and so forth. But basically they had their own little niche area. And that's what we're seeing now. So when I look at the cell site gateway, for example, so we've got ADVA, then we've got Exaware, and Exaware that comes from a big powerful routing stack. We've got IPI's Oknos, which comes from the data center side, moving back out. We've got Volta Networks, which you can split the router into 254 virtual routers. So it's going to be brilliant for multi-tenancy. So they all have their own little areas, and that's where kind of we come in.
Thank you.
Is to help and advise.
I think we're conscious of time, so thanks again, and hope to see you at a future ISPA event or two as well. Maybe one day, who knows? Thanks, Barry. Next up, we have Marcin Bala from Salimas, who has been a familiar face at some ISPA events in the past 18 months. So welcome again, Marcin, and I'll leave you to kick off your presentation.
Thank you, Andrew. Hello, everyone. During today's presentation, I would like to share with you 3 successful cases of implementation of customized WDM solutions. Personally, I fall in love in WDM technology 12 years ago, and history of this technology is not so long, as first commercial deployment was done in 1996. The system that time was equipped only in 16 in the 10 channel, and in channel was running with 2.5 gigabits throughput. Today, technology allows us to send over the single fiber even 400, if over single channel, even 400 gigabit speed, which is 10 times more. And present technology also allows us to run even more than 1,000 kilometers without any electrical regeneration. But cases I prepare for today are a bit different and much easier, because there are cases related to ISP market and some smaller enterprise market. I think that most of CTO, technical officer of ISP, are having similar nightmare, because now your salesperson are selling more and more bandwidth to the customer, to the end user. And the nightmare is about what we will do with uplinks, what we will do with our backbone network. And the solution for this is very simple. We just need to add some another links, some another uplinks for our core network, for our core links. But fortunately or unfortunately, we have also in our offices, in our companies, financial directors. And these financial directors will say us, okay, you could add more links, but you need to stay with the same monthly cost. And this is one of the main reasons of my today's topic. And that's why I decided to share with you three cases. First case is building the network based on 2 fiber. The other one is building the network based on 1 fiber. And the last, about encryption, is not directly about building the network for ISPs. But as you, ISP, are at the stage that day by day you will have more and more fiber resources in your pocket. This kind of requirement you could get from your potential customer. So I believe that this is also the new market opportunity you could develop very soon with more fiber resources in your pocket. So let's move to the first case. As usually it's happened, the requirements starts very simple. So first of all, we have one 10G link between our two core nodes or as an uplink. And when the link is almost fully loaded, we are facing the issue that we need to make some decision, what to do next. And then one of the solution is, of course, we could rent another 10G speed. But the issue is how it will influence our monthly cost. So this is the space when I believe that WDM solutions are able to help a lot of us as help one of our customers. In this particular case, we present to our customer few possible solutions, and this customer, even though that his requirement, we were able to meet renting just one dark fiber, he decided to rent two dark fibers to have more available channels. Then at the end of the day, he find out that the link he built with WDM system was very interesting also for other companies in the region. So in fact, he started reselling 10G connections over his own WDM system. At the present stage, this customer have on their own purpose running only 4 times 10G. But the total system is running with 20 times 10G and 1 times 40G services, which means that this system allows our customer to develop completely new market opportunity. And 200 gigabits throughput he already resell to other ISPs. At the present stage, last month, we helped this customer to run over this system first 200G channel. And using this 200G channel, we are providing 200 gigabit local interface to the customers. So this is the example, like this is the example of customer who take a bit more risk at the beginning, decided to choose maybe a bit harder way. But in fact, at the end of the day, I think that we could already say that this customer is quite successfully because of developing very, very well new business opportunity. The other example is of the customer who play a bit more safer way and decided to build a network, the DWDM network, only for their own needs. So in fact, the case from this year is just running extra 100 gigabit Ethernet link over the existing WDM system, which we built for customer 3 years ago. But 3 years ago, the case was pretty similar. So it was that customer has on their one dark fiber just run 10 gig connection using BD transceivers. And when they want to run another speed, there was very simple decision: hire rent another single fiber or build WDM system. With building WDM system, we allow this customer to gradually upgrade their network with an additional 10 gig speed without increasing monthly cost, because only what they need to add, installing extra throughput, was just 2 transceivers at both ends of the system. The system is customized that way that over the single fiber, we are able to run 8 independent channels. And these channels are designed that way that 4 amongst these 8 could be updated to 100 gigabit speed. It means that over the single fiber, for the distance up to 120 kilometers, we are able to get the throughput of total 440 gigabits between 2 nodes. The last case, as I've mentioned, is about new business opportunity. Because most of you will have more and more own fiber resources, and this could lead you to get access to some new business opportunity to support small, medium enterprise in your region and also financial institutions. most of these financial institutions, they need to have two data centers with some geographical distance between them. And also they need to connect this data center and synchronize data between them. They have a lot of requirement about traffic sensitivity, and mostly they need to be connected with two independent, geographically independent paths. And they require some standard traffic, like 10 gig, like 16 gig fiber channel. But the issue is that most of the time the traffic needs to be encrypted. Of course, there is a lot layer 2, layer 3 encryption solution on the market. But if we take into account that the encryption will be done on layer 2 and layer 3, it means that encryption information is stored in the header of the frame or packet. So if the packet is small or frame is small, the efficiency of this encryption could be really low. And the other issue is that it could affect, first of all, the throughput, and other is that it could really affect the delay. That's why the layer 1 encryption protocol was developed. Layer 1 encryption protocol has 3 key advantages. There is, first of all, there is completely transparent for the traffic. Then the other is traffic independent. So no matter what you want to send over this encrypted link, if it's gigabit Ethernet or fiber channel solution, you could do it. And the other is that the delay adding to the transmission because of encryption is really, really small. And basically, if you want to run such kind of services for your future potential customer, only what you need to do is install the dedicated boxes on both ends of the network. And no matter what you have in the middle, if you will run it over dark fiber, or if you will run it over the existing WDM system. To sum up, as you will notice, I show you 3 different successful cases. And each of these cases is sort of customized to meet customer requirements. This is something really beautiful about DWDM technology, that it could be easy customized. So if you facing the problem of increasing the bandwidth between your node, just tell us your story. We are here, we are listening, and we are ready to support you with great solutions to help meet your customer requirement. If you want to find out more about some technology, you could find more articles at salumanus.com/en/blog.php. There is more information about technology, about the user cases. So it could be really helpful for you. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Marcin, for that presentation. Am I right in thinking that Salumanus have opened an office in the UK recently?
Yes, that's true. We set up the company also in UK to be closer to our customer, to support our customer better. And yeah, so this is in fact one of our key improvements from the last meeting.
Good to hear. And just in terms of questions, we've not received that many on the chat, but I had one about the difference in terms of investment needed for a single and double fiber system.
If we talk about the differences in investment, you probably could also notice it from the slide that the structure of the networks, no matter if you run it on the single fiber or dual fiber, are pretty similar. So only few devices are different. So in most of the cases, the only difference, the difference is just few percent. So it's just a matter of monthly cost. If you have enough money and you're thinking that it could bring more benefits to your company, then it's better to run system over 2 fiber and resell some speed. If you want to be more safer and build the network only for your own need, probably single fiber will be enough and will help you to save a bit more cost.
Great, thank you. Conscious of time, so I think we might have to move on to our next speaker, but thanks again for presenting to you again.
Thank you very much.
For events.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up, we have Radek Ziemba from Fibrain. We'll be presenting on optimizing the cost of deploying a full fiber network. So welcome, Radek, and over to you.
Hello, and thanks for invitation. Let me introduce the Fibrain and Halne networks before I will go to the slides with the content that you're probably looking for. I will take that opportunity to take these 2 slides to introduce the Fibrain. Fibrain is present on the telecommunication market for over 25 years. We are actually have over 4 factories located in Poland, and we are kind of a leader or pioneer of FTTH in Central East Europe. And for a couple of years, a couple of years ago, we established a Halne Networks brand, which is actually dedicated for the GPON and XGS-PON products. So far, we have some success also in UK with delivering that products. So with the portfolio of the Fibrain products, we actually focus on fiber optic cables manufacturing, but as well we can deliver turnkey solution together with active devices, with PON systems, and all other products that dedicated for fiber to the premises, but also the products dedicated for the core, including some transceivers. So majority of our products are actually manufactured here in Europe. So with the recent supply chain issues caused by COVID-19, we are actually kind of a supplier of the first choice, as we can deliver the products within a short time from Poland. Okay, so going to the main topics, because we already have 11 years experience in GPON products deployment, I would like to share with you some of the key points, how to optimize and how to build economical FTTH solution, not only on terms of the CapEx, but as well on the OpEx side. So GPON market status. Basically, when we look on the CapEx side, when we are considering to buy some OLTs and ONTs, so the active devices needed for the FTTH, then what we should be aware is that actually OLT accounts for like 10% of the total CapEx spending, especially when we are considering to deliver to the subscriber ONTs with Wi-Fi, like Wi-Fi 6 or 4x4 Wi-Fi. Then basically OLT for like 1,000 of subscribers accounts for like 10%. So unfortunately, most of the telecoms regional operators, they actually start selecting the suppliers start from OLT, which actually later on brings that issue of the interoperability, or brings the issue of licensing third-party ONT suppliers. In order to deliver economical solution, and in order to not be bundled with the supplier or the vendor, it's actually critical to ensure that there is no vendor locking, as you can see on the slide, or you can select any other ONT supplier on the market. So that will give you the flexibility that the tier 1 operators already have. So as a Halne, we actually recognize this issue with interoperability, and we actually developed own products. So the Halne Networks products are fully developed in Poland, and we give this freedom of choice for the operators. So we develop unique technology called adaptive OMCI stack. You can go to YouTube and find found this movie that I'm actually showing to you right now. The technology fully simplify the GPON ONT deployment, no matter what OLT vendor you have. The key point is that the ONT is able to recognize to which OLT vendor it is connected. So in case you have some failure, or in case you are connecting your ONT for the first time to the network and you are using several OLT vendors, then basically ONT will adapt their OMCI stack, which is the protocol that OLT and ONT use to exchange the provisioning. And basically ONT will adapt the communication and will allow to deliver triple play service, including multicast IPTV, including voice over IP, and of course high-speed internet. So the technology is advanced enough that we can also eliminate the vendor locking, that in case you already have some products in the field that kind of force you to use the products coming from the same OLT vendor. And with that, let's say, technology, we believe that the operators can definitely reduce the cost, not only on the CapEx side, but as well on the OpEx side, because you have freedom of choice for the OLTs. So you can continue to build your networks no matter what of the OLT vendor. On the movie that you will find in the YouTube, you can actually see that we demonstrate this technology to work with over 5 OLT vendors. So that's just simple as plug and play. So that's the key part for the CapEx. Let's see how that looks on the OpEx side. For over a couple of years, we support Orange Poland for the fixed broadband sharing concept. The concept is pretty great because it allows to deploy FTTH in the rural area, but not only in the rural area, and share the infrastructure. So basically the CapEx is shared among several operators, or if not the CapEx, then the OpEx is shared, because you can basically share infrastructure with, for example, mobile operator that will also deliver the fixed service over the infrastructure. We built a special demarcation ONT. So we have the ONT that allows you to also share the infrastructure. So that's pretty nice concept, especially when we are thinking about savings on the OpEx side. We also recognize that the most of the issues related to the subscribers' complaints are related to the Wi-Fi, and especially when we are deploying the FTTH in the houses, then the coverage might be a problem. So our GPON ONTs include the Easy Mesh controller feature. So as you can see on the picture, you can basically, customer can go to the any shop and buy Easy Mesh nodes, and basically they can contact our GPON ONTs, and he can build a mesh infrastructure based on the ONT he received from the operator. So that's also the way that we are kind of open. We are not locking the operator or subscribers with their own mesh agents, although we can deliver them as well. With recent, let's say, pandemic, we also recognize that the critical part for saving on the OpEx side, and not only saving the money, but as well limiting the contact of the engineers in the field, is that we have to include several features that allow us to troubleshoot the issues coming from the subscribers. So we implement the speed test feature on the ONTs. So basically, wherever subscriber calls you and say that his internet doesn't perform well, the operator can test in the real time the speed that he's able to provide to the ONTs. Our products also include the hardware offloading. So this means that you can reach 300, 500 megabit service that are terminated on the ONT. In order to also decrease the number of calls from the subscribers, we also introduced the smartphone app. So with the smartphone app, the subscriber have, let's say, we simplify the management and monitoring of the internet service. So with the smartphone app, we simplify how the Wi-Fi can be set up, what sort of devices are connected to the ONT. So we highly encouraging the operators to distribute that app to the subscribers in order to limit the number of calls they have from their subscribers. One of the as I already mentioned 2 slides before, the Wi-Fi actually is pretty critical in terms of the number of calls from the subscribers. So we also integrate with OpenOLT.com, which is the cloud network management system, and that also have the smart Wi-Fi feature. So what you can do, you can troubleshoot the Wi-Fi in the house of the subscribers during the call. So you can check what sort of devices are connected, what is the spectrum, and select the best channel to the subscriber, or you can provide some advice to the subscribers, like, for example, unplugging from the Wi-Fi the legacy, for example, printers that slows down the Wi-Fi. So basically, we know that nowadays with COVID-19, it's highly important to limit the visit of the engineers in the house of the subscribers. So at the end, the key point to have a low TCO is to actually select the products which are open. So the one that support interoperability. What we can actually also help you to decrease the cost is that we are actually coming from Europe, so support and deployment and delivery of the products origin from here. So there is no time difference. We can quickly recognize the features that you need, and we can develop it. At the end, we already work for over 11 years in the GPON field, and we can say we are proud of delivering over 700,000 of ONTs so far. So I believe with our interoperable ONTs, the operators can benefit with low TCO for the fiber to the premises deployment. At the end, I would like to invite you to our booth. For those of operators that are interested in the GPON deployment, we have free GPON ONTs. In case you drop us your contact, we can share our ONTs for you, so you can test them with the OLTs you already have. So thanks for listening, and talk to you on the expo menu.
Thanks, Radek. Presentation. Just a quick question. Do you guys have much of a footprint in the UK? Are you just moving into the market?
Yeah, we already have actually 3 customers that are using our products, and we just started. So we are talking about several thousand of ONTs delivered so far. We also deliver a couple of OLTs. So basically, wherever you're looking for the let's say bundled GPON solution, you can contact us, and we are here to help you.
Great. There's a lot of activity in the market at the moment, as you know, in the UK. So I'm sure there's plenty of conversations to be had. And I'll just repeat, yeah, please do visit Vibrain's Expo stand, and I'm sure we'll be seeing events as well. So thank you, Radek.
Thank you. Bye.
Which takes us through to our final speaker of today. I know these are quite rapid fire presentations. So I'd like to welcome Finbar from Cavell Group to present. He'll be running through some findings, I think, from the latest research and survey, including some views from ISPA members, I believe, around ISP SD-WAN adoption. And obviously, we're hearing a lot about this at the moment, so it'd be interesting to see what we've got. So over to you, Finbar. Thank you.
Hello. So for those of you who aren't familiar with myself or where I come from, I work for a company called the Cavell Group. We primarily historically have been sort of cloud comm service provider researchers based in the UK. We also have a professional services arm that helps companies deploy network technology like like SD-WAN and things like that. I work with large companies across Europe, and that's based more in Amsterdam and on the continent, with lots of sort of professional services capabilities there. So myself, I was brought on about a year ago to be sort of a networking analyst, as Cavell decided that we wanted to start expanding our remit out from cloud communications into adjacent technologies, things like networking, technologies like SD-WAN and things like that that are being provided now alongside cloud communications, and very much get involved with service providers in that space. So today I've sort of come along to present a bit of our research, talk about what we're doing, and just generally raise a bit of awareness about how we're working in this space, and so we can sort of raise our profile and maybe work with some of you a bit better. So I guess the first thing I want to show you comes from a report we did where we're looking at MSPs across Europe. And you can see here that we're looking at people who are providing services like SD-WAN, and we have other breakdowns about people who are providing things like networking and Wi-Fi and those sorts of things. But generally, we wanted to look and see how SD-WAN growth as sort of this new technology was going through amongst service providers in Europe. So looking at the breakdown, you can see that in Germany, it's doing quite well. In the UK, it's doing really well. In other countries, not really doing so well. And then from this service provider research that we've been doing, and I'm sure you've got an email about it from Andrew, there are companies we're seeing that are having some really good success with like 2,000 to 5,000 sites in production. But a lot of customers are falling in that 10 to 300 range of sites per customer, but obviously they're signing up quite a few customers. In terms of the sort of service providers that are still providing this service, it is still very much tied to sort of the global, the mid-market and the large companies. It's not really making its way down into the smaller companies yet. And we'll talk about why that is a bit later on. But, when we talk to people about SD-WAN strategies, and I think this is coming partly from responses we've had from members of ISPA, is that the majority of the times when people are selling SD-WAN, it's bundled with access. Obviously, that makes a lot of sense in terms of network provision and your ability to monitor and control the service, but also the sort of people you're selling access to. You're selling SD-WAN as an add-on to improve the quality of their access. Pretty much it's come standard and sort of status quo across the industry, and most vendors are providing a portal that you can tailor for your own usage. But portals very much have become the standard for things like SD-WAN. There is very much a pressure from companies to want to create less support tickets and manage and tweak small things by themselves, even if it's just adding a new program to a whitelist or setting up a new box that comes plug and play, that kind of thing. There is very much a drive towards the status quo where portals are very, very sort of required when you're offering this kind of service. In terms of things like billing, one of the things that I thought was quite interesting was that pretty much every SP is charging per site. No one's really offering it as a free add-on, though we have seen some companies offering SD-WAN as an add-on for large access contracts for as little as like £7 for an add-on. But that doesn't include the hardware needed. So obviously there's a bit of a markup there. And pretty much everyone we saw was also setting their pricing independent of the license costs from vendors, and generally finding a sort of a point that was comfortable for them, either because they thought that SD-WAN was clarifying, improving one of their services, therefore it was worth giving it as a cheaper option. And we've seen that happen in several cases, is that it's being offered as a cheaper than it would be from the vendor, but in turn it improves the quality of service you're providing on your access, on your additional solutions, which then justifies its cost in terms of churn, in terms of customer revenue and secured customer revenue for providing better quality of service. Most of the people we're speaking to as well are just using long-term contracts, nothing new there, pretty much what you'd expect. However, there has been a sort of a slow rise in terms of sort of at-will, changeable contracts, kind of like your traditional voice and your software contracts, where if I get a new user or a new site, I can tweak my contract a little bit. If I close down a site, I can just take that contract off. And that's becoming a lot more common, which of course has knock-on effects in terms of expected revenue, because it's harder to predict if you don't know how quickly your customers are changing, but also gives customers flexibility. And a lot of times we're seeing premiums being charged for these services, and then the service is never actually being changed, which is pretty standard in terms of, you think, people paying extra for flex and then not using flex contracts. Pretty much the majority of service we're seeing in the UK certainly are fully or co-managed. Lots of people are taking on things like SD-WAN because they don't really want to do it themselves. And they're relying then on the vendors, orchestrators, and portals, and either rebranding them or just using them as a sell-on rather than taking on and developing their own. Obviously, in the larger companies, there has been a push to develop their own platform, but there has been sort of some negative experiences there with some of the early SD-WAN products being a bit too complicated, requiring a lot of work to create a properly tiered service that you can sell to your customers without giving them too much access to the network. So that's kind of trends. I wanted to include a bit on portals because they are becoming very, very important. And I want people to understand the sort of things that customers are starting to expect if you're trying to give them a portal to manage network services. And that is the basic things like application steering, administration, site deployment, and then usually some sort of firewall rules and ability to add links and manage links. So if you're thinking, I have a portal, I'm trying to sell a network service like this, these are the things that you should probably consider making sure your portal can do. So in terms of vendor awareness and usage, because this is a question I get from service providers a lot about SD-WAN, which is what should we use? What are people using? And how do we choose? Because there's lots of different options, especially if you are already offering a service and some customers aren't pleased, or you haven't started offering one yet. In terms of awareness, I don't think anyone will be surprised to see that Huawei is top of the awareness list, potentially for negative reasons, as they've been getting a lot of press recently. Down from that, the two Cisco solutions are, people are very aware of them, as you would expect with Cisco. Juniper has a very strong brand. VeloCloud always makes sure to include VMware in its messaging, so of course it can ride the wave of VMware awareness, but VeloCloud itself is building a strong brand. And then the other ones are set to change a bit and grow. HP, for example, has just acquired Silver Peak about a month ago, so those numbers may actually combine when we redo this next year. Then in terms of people who are currently using SD-WAN, so at the top end, which isn't included in this slide, Viptela, Meraki from Cisco are very much sort of the dominant players. But if you look overall, something like VeloCloud is being very, very appealing in the sort of mid to low end. And things like, oddly, Huawei is here as well, and Huawei is very much a technology and hardware focused SD-WAN play, but they seem to be quite popular in the lower end of the market as well. And you also see players who provide mostly hardware like Peplink and things like that also being quite popular the further down you go, because they have a much larger range of form factors, whereas someone like VeloCloud probably has 3 or 4, and if you look at Peplink, they'll have 30 or 40. So it's a lot easier to fit something from Peplink into your network compared to some of the larger providers who may not have the same level of form factors. So there's a lot of, the UK market has a large range of providers. There's a lot of people who are providing 8% of the technology to enterprises who say they're using it. And there's a lot of people who are providing, a bit more, but there is a very, very good mix. So you may have to look at a few more vendors than just the one if you want to find something that really suits you and suits your customers. Then in terms of where people are actually getting stuff like SD-WAN from, and I talk about SD-WAN a lot when I'm doing this research because it's one of the newer networking technologies, which is a good indication of sort of where trust comes in terms of I trust you to deploy a new technology, rather than necessarily just where I've bought my stuff from completely. So I kind of see when we get SD-WAN research as it being indicative of the activity of the market as a whole, just because of how SD-WAN is bought and sold, though I know it doesn't apply to everyone selling access or everyone just selling basic services and those kind of things. But we see that people still trust their major network providers to buy this technology from, especially when you go up to large companies. Major network providers are just trusted. People expect they'll get a better SD-WAN service from someone who provides the full network to them, because you get more monitoring if they have more access to the network and what's going on underneath it. However, immediately underneath that is the people who already provide business solutions, the people who already provide access, because they've probably, at the point that they're being considered for a new technology, already established a trusted relationship. And more importantly, if you already trust someone for access and someone comes along and says, hey, look, I'll sell you this for X more a month, and it's going to improve the quality of the access I already sell you, you might be willing to give it a try. You might be willing to try it out. Whereas if someone new comes in and says, well, my access is the same as their access, but I've got this fancy new box that speeds it up a bit, you might be a bit more wary to try it out. And there's a lot of things like proof of concepts and stuff like that happening in SD-WAN at the moment. that we've seen in the UK, where people are just testing the box on a few sites, and when they see the results coming in terms of it's improving application quality and things like that, then they're thinking maybe I should deploy this. Next, so I've given a bit of an overview of sort of SD-WAN and the service provider market. And then I really want to sort of segue into talking about home working, because that's something we've been doing a lot of research in recently in terms of sort of COVID and trends like that. And just talk a bit about home working and the network needs of home workers, because I thought that would be quite interesting for all of you today. So firstly, if we look at the percentage of companies offering home working, we see in 2019, 67%. We see a massive spike, COVID-related, 78%. And that's mirrored below, where you can see the number of companies that let more than half of their workforce work from home, where it jumps from 21% to 41%. And there's about a 10% jump in people who are letting all of their workforce work from home, as you'd expect because of COVID. What's interesting is charting sort of does this fall off. And if you look, it's 78 to 77. So it doesn't really fall off. People are expecting to offer home working in a large capacity after this. But what does sort of fall off is the amount of people they expect to be working from home. And it drops down to about sort of 5% higher than it was across the board in 2021. So people are kind of, they've seen the surge. It's never going back to where it was before. It's kind of accelerated the home working trend by maybe 2 to 3 years. But a lot of companies are sort of just embracing that and moving on and just letting people work from home more and in higher quantities as well. You know, home working very much here to stay, very much been adopted. We've had lots of people we've spoken to say, we're not going to go back. We're reducing our offices to 66%. We're moving to 100% home working. We just see it working for us. And that, of course, has a lot of implications for networking providers. So if we look at the biggest problems in this COVID study that we did in terms of home working, top of that list came out as security issues. So people are worried about getting their access, getting their VPNs, getting all that security. They're worried about hacked hardware and hacked routers. They're worried about security on home computers and how they secure those when everyone's working remotely. There's a huge problem with internal culture. We've had several people say their CEO just didn't like home working, and the only reason he did it was because he was forced to. And we're seeing there's a big problem with, and I think a few people have already said this today, is that, you know, with the crisis, there is a problem with just hardware in terms of both laptops, but also in terms of appropriate network access, having the right Wi-Fi, having a system that, you know, provides Wi-Fi to you in your home office if you have one, but doesn't like let your kids on that Wi-Fi and crowd it as well. So there are a lot of technical problems. Interestingly enough, there weren't a lot of solution problems. A lot of companies had some form of cloud comms in Teams or Zoom, and were able to quickly switch to one of those services, which scaled really quickly. But there have been some last mile network problems in terms of crowded streets, lots of people working from specific areas, and also lots of just, as I think other people have said, home Wi-Fi problems where your kids are now at home, your partner's now working from home as well, and there's just crowding on the network and your services aren't working properly. So, I mean, as a solution to that, some people have considered paying for their employees' broadband, for example. And this chart really sort of illustrates that if you think about people who are willing to pay for some of their employees' broadband, so this isn't the percentage of their employees they're willing to pay for. These are companies that are willing to pay for some form of home network, home broadband, even if it's just for like 10% of their company. You can see that there is a drastic portion of companies, especially at the large, who are willing to get involved in the home broadband specialized networking device for home working sort of market. And this very sort of ties into what I quickly want to break down, which is the idea of service needs for the home workers. We've kind of broken, and this is both us and sort of a few of the vendors and other industry bodies have kind of started to break down users into 3 categories, which is your power users, your standard users, and your light users. And if you think about the terms of what you're offering in terms of packages to these people, their needs are going to differ. So for your power users, if you're providing access to a company, you might start adding in things like cellular backup routers so that they're always on. So they always have 2 links coming into their home office. You might provide some security solutions for that network package. You might provide a special mobile device for them, mobile dongles, so they have to leave the office. They can always use the same service. And it's really just about maintaining their always on presence, Whereas once you get down to standard and light users, the always on isn't necessary. So they may not need a backup. They may just need a reasonable quality router and your company to pay for their broadband, for example, so that they don't just buy the cheapest option they used at home before, and you pay for them to get, 64, 100, 1 gig, whatever they need really for their job. And then the light user, you're probably not going to pay for any of that. If they fall off for a few hours because there's an outage or something like that, you're not actually going to panic. You're going to be like, well, that person's going to get back on sooner or later. So we're really starting to think of users who are working from home in these 3 categories, and then trying to decide what technology is appropriate to them based on that. So I really just want to sort of start to wrap up because I know I'm running late on time, and just think about what the biggest changes to networking and SD-WAN technology, especially in the past year, have been. And the main things that we're seeing is that things like cloud security, identity management, mobility are becoming very, very, very important to companies. And, how I verify who is accessing my network, where they are, what they're using, and that the access they're using is secure wherever they are. So if they're at home or they're traveling, how do I know that the network they're using is secure? How do I verify that? It's becoming a very big question. SD-WAN is being sold. People are starting to make smaller profile SD-WAN and network devices for home workers, but they haven't really rolled out yet. And we haven't really seen big numbers selling the at-home SD-WAN or the at-home networking packages that these vendors have made available. The cost for the device is still pretty much too high, except for that category of power users. Cost and productivity, of course, are still the main features in terms of SD-WAN, also in terms of network adoption. And if you're looking for who is going to be the top provider, you're kind of looking at VMware and Cisco, but there's a bit of a debate as to whether or not one of the large security companies is going to come down and help get involved in that, because they're already adding network capabilities. As a bit of a self-plug, just to sort of wrap up, if you're interested in these topics, we do have a virtual event coming up on the 21st of October, which is just an afternoon, which will feature a lot of discussion about the future of networking, how that works when you're providing to enterprises big and small, what's going to happen with hyperscalers and how they're doing networking and things like that, and how that sort of knocks onto everything. And then I'll just say, if you have any questions, get involved with me. If you've seen the email from Andrew with the survey, it is still open. We're still collecting data. And of course, if we get enough responses, we'll put out some stats that we can give to all of you. And, we'll give you some feedback on that so you can all get something out of it if you engage with it. At the moment, we've had a few responses, but we could do with a lot more to generate some sort of proper stats, and keen to sort of get that rolling. Otherwise, we've given you some takeaways from what we've seen from the numbers we've had so far and the conversations we've had. And of course, we're here to answer any questions. My email address is on the screen.
Thank you, Finbar. Really interesting, and absolutely fine to plug your own event. No problems with that whatsoever.
I should have asked, but
and yes, I'll also plug the survey too for those that haven't had a chance to fill it in. We'll send details as a follow-up from this event. Again, conscious of time, just a quick question from me around barriers to adoption. You mentioned cost is one of them. Are there any other barriers you're seeing? And I suppose it depends if it's an SME or a corporate, what that could be. But interested in any thoughts on that at all?
I mean, the main 2 barriers of adoption are cost and need, right? So if you think about cost, is fairly simple. I mean, the devices, some of them cost 300 quid as an upfront cost, and then there's a software license as well, which you're only going to pay for like your CEO and your high critical workers who just can't be offline. But there's also just need. I mean, your light workers don't probably need an SD-WAN device. They just need maybe you to step in and pay like £30-40 for their broadband, so that they don't take 20 megabytes a month, they take like 60, and then you just don't have to worry about them because they're on a much higher quality line, and you don't have to worry about the need. So that's kind of the barrier to SD-WAN adoption. In terms of like rollout, people are saying that because it's software as a service and it's managed through a portal, it's easy to manage 200 sites that are all home offices as it is to manage 200 sites that are offices. In fact, easier because there's just one device. So there's no technology reason not to adopt these services. It's more just about need and the right sort of situations for deployment. And as the technology gets cheaper, there'll be more reasons to put it in people's houses.
Yeah, and as you say, with COVID, it's accelerating a number of existing trends. So it could be part of the sort of acceleration of this. There's going to be some tricky times ahead for service providers like everyone else, with an economy going into yeah, very difficult times, but for people home working, they get a potentially better, higher quality services, more reliable services, and this could play a part. So interesting one that we're probably only at the yeah, sort of at the start of, so we'll see how that develops.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, thanks again. Conscious of time, so I don't want to keep people for any longer than necessary, but yeah, I hope to see you again at future events as well. So that just leaves me to wrap up. So thank you again to all the speakers for their insightful presentations. Thanks to you for joining and for asking questions, and please do stay behind if you have time to visit the stands, both for networking and also for the expo area too. As I said at the start, it's the first time we use this platform. I think we are looking to use it again, so we're really keen to get your views on how you think it's worked. And I believe my colleague Audrey has just posted a poll in the poll section, again in the top right hand. There's a little red dot there, so it's gone live, just to get your views on literally some very simple questions. So please do fill that in before you disappear. And then finally, just to say we have a third and final webinar next week, business model webinar, that is, on cybersecurity at 2 o'clock, same time. And then our final event of the year, which is also online, is going to be the ISPA Awards, so a very different beast, on November the 18th. And then we'll be looking at an event program for 2021, which will no doubt start with lots of virtual events, and we'll see what we can do on a more physical sense as well. So thanks again, and yeah, I hope to see you at a future event. Bye-bye.